I have a million questions that I'm asked all the time about being an entrepreneur. What's it like, and is it scary being an entrepreneur, and how did you get started? And there's a million questions people want to ask you. And I thought to myself, bang, one day, wouldn't it be great to have an entrepreneur's masterclass where I can bring some of these unbelievable people, people like we read about them and we read their stories. They're legendary, but we only see them on film and we have visualizations of what they are. But actually to sit down with them and talk to them, I thought, wouldn't that be a wonderful way to learn? Nothing's new. I remember watching the old actor classes several years ago, how they visualized and how they created their careers and how they just kept getting better and better. And I thought to myself at that time, what a wonderful way for a young person to learn the craft directly from the old guys. I thought it was a very elegant way to teach. Today's guest is Mr. Bert Lopez, and I've known Bert for decades, and I'm so looking forward to this interview. Bert is one of the best role models on the planet for entrepreneurs for just so many reasons. Now, to conduct the interview, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Tim, who's going to tell you much more about Bert's background and ask Bert some very stimulating questions so Bert can share his secrets of entrepreneurial success with you today. Tim, thanks for facilitating today. And I'm handing this over to you now, and I'm going to listen and learn.
Thanks so much, Peter. And it is great to be with everyone wherever it is you're dialing in from today. Thank you for joining us. As Peter mentioned, we are going to have a great conversation with Bert Lopez.
Let me just start out by saying, Peter, you exaggerated not a little bit, but quite a bit. I'm not that good. I'm just very lucky and blessed. Uh, well, let me go back. I grew up. I was born in Nogales, Arizona. I grew up in Mexico. My father passed away when I was 12 years old. We were a middle class family living in Mexico. He passed away without a will, so my mother moves back to Nogales, and we move in with my grandmother and uncle, her brother. And it was a small 3 bedroom house, 1 bedroom. There were 6 children, 3 adults. So it's a little crowded house. But so we grew up poor because at that point my mother had to go on welfare to be able to feed the kids. I was 12 years old, so I was pretty much forced to go out and try to help out the family, earning money wherever I could. So I started selling newspapers, and I would also go around on the weekends after school or in the afternoons and knock on doors in the neighborhood and offer to weed their yards or cut their grass or do whatever chores they needed me to do. So I guess at that point, without realizing it, I became an entrepreneur overnight.
And how did you go from that point of needing to be an entrepreneur from that early stage at 12 years old, learning to be an entrepreneur, and then into and throughout your school years as well as early professional years?
Well, first of all, I remember I was holding my mother's hand, and we're in line at the welfare. Back in those days, they didn't give you food stamps. You had to go in and get the food. And my mother had grown up in Nogales. So when we were growing up in Mexico, we were a middle class family. We lived very well. My father was a rancher, farmer. We had a nice house, nice cars, and all of a sudden we didn't have anything. So she was so embarrassed. I remember telling her one day, "Mom, I'm going to take care of you." So I made that promise, and I remember very well because back in those days, women used to wear a hat and gloves. So I told her that one day she'd be wearing a hat and gloves herself. So I pretty much had that in mind since early age. So, but I knew I had to get an education. However, I don't know how the heck I ever got through high school. Because when I was in high school, I got a job working in a grocery store. I'd leave school at 3 o'clock, run over to the grocery store, and work till about 10:30 every night to go home after I had mopped the grocery store. So and I would do that from Monday through Saturday, putting in 40, 44 hours a week. Consequently, I was a C student. I don't recall how I ever did any homework, and consequently, I think that's the reason I was a C student. So when it came time to go to college, I interviewed with my counselor, and he pretty much advised that I was not college material, that I should go out to a junior college and get a a trade, become a carpenter, a plumber, an electrician. Boy, and that's not what I had in mind. So anyway, I was scared, so I did go to a junior college. And started taking all my prerequisites. I worked that summer. I worked during the school year, and applied myself and getting good grades. I graduated from the junior college in 2 years with more credits that I needed. And I had taken an accounting class, not knowing what I was going to do in life. I decided to take an accounting class. I was pretty good at math since growing up in Mexico. Math was accelerated over what they were teaching in this country. So I took the accounting course, and started getting all A's. So boy, that was an easy course. So I graduated from it was Cochise College in Douglas, Arizona, and transferred to the University of Arizona, where I stayed for 2 years, graduated in 2 years with I think it was about 24 credits more than I needed. I always took 18 credits every year, every semester, except the last semester I tried to take 21 credits, and I only dropped one class in all my life, and that was a speed reading class, which is probably the one I should have kept, because I'm not a very good speed reader. So anyway, I graduated with an accounting degree. My minor was Spanish, and the reason I took Spanish and accounting, those are the courses that I got all A's. The other ones I was getting B's. I don't recall if I got any C's in college, but I did apply myself. So I graduated with an accounting degree. I did not want to stay in Tucson or in Arizona because if we went to work for an accounting firm, most likely I would have ended up doing tax work. I did not want to be an accountant all my life. So I interviewed with all the big eight at the time, and everyone that I interviewed with, I got job offers. I think the reason for it, they had the affirmative action those days, and they needed Hispanics. So I went to work for Deloitte, which used to be Haskins Sells back in those days, is Deloitte nowadays, one of the big four accounting firms, with the idea that I go into the audit field, uh, learn a business that I felt comfortable with. And I didn't know whether it be manufacturing, retailing, uh, entertainment, real estate. So I was looking for different assignments, trying to figure out where my niche was going to be. And I remember coming home every night with the ideas with my wife as to what I was going to do. I would put it down on paper. I'd do a little business plan and come up with all these ideas and present them to my wife. And one day in 1971, in one of the audits, uh, the controller and I became very good friends. He told me about how to turn $1,000 into $1,000,000. I got so excited with it. The formula was so simple that I went out and borrowed $1,000 from the uncle I had grown up with and bought a $3,000 lot. The seller carried back $2,000, of which I was paying $100 monthly payments, which we could hardly, barely afford. But we managed to make the payments. 6 months later, I sold a lot for $6,000, making a $3,000 profit, and the rest is history. By 1976, I had made my first million, and by 1980, I tried retiring after building up a $13 million fortune. So that's pretty much in a nutshell, where I got where I am. But by the way, I spent 5.5 years with Deloitte and started doing my deals in 1971. And I did one deal after the other, and the office pretty soon knew that I was doing real estate. My concentration was real estate while I was still being an auditor. And it came to a point that I had to make a decision. I either had to remain as an accountant with a firm or go out and try it on my own, because otherwise I would have been fired. There is no doubt that I tried to stay there another few more months, they would have called me in and given me a pink slip. So I went out. We started out. I brought with me one of my good friends who I had met in the first day of the job, Glenn Toyoshima, and we formed a firm called Lopez and Toyoshima CPAs. The reason we did that is just in case my real estate deals didn't work out, we could always be accountants. Well, a year later, I went back to Glenn and told Glenn, we don't need to do this anymore. We're doing very well. So let's close the practice and concentrate 100% in real estate. So that's pretty much in a nutshell how I got where I am today.
Was there a point in time when you recognized that you were going to be successful as an entrepreneur, whether that be in real estate or somewhere else?
Well, I think it came very quickly. When I first bought that lot, 6 months, immediately I bought another lot. 6 months later, I sold it. I'd made, I think, $6,000 on that property, plus the $3,000 I'd made and the $1,000 I paid my uncle already from a tax refund I got. I had $10,000. Then I bought a house in duplex 6 months later, so I sold it for a $15,000 profit. Uh, at that point, then I was up to $25,000 with my $1,000 investment, and that was only in a year and a half that I got up to that level very quickly. I When I graduated from college, I was drafted, and immediately I called a friend of mine in Nogales, who was a commander of the National Guard there in Nogales, and I told him that I wanted to join the Guard. That I was moving to Nogales. I got a job with an accounting firm out there, and at that point, there was everybody was trying to get into the National Guard or the Army Reserves, and there were no slots open. So he did me the favor, admitted me. Then I went did my training. Came back 6 months later. Went immediately to Los Angeles, where I spent 11 years until I came back to Tucson. Uh, so at that point, when I was at the Guard, I we would meet once a month, and I got to meet a number of people there, mostly the soldiers. I called myself a soldier. We were all college graduates, highly educated, and we sit around the weekends. And since I was doing real estate, I came up with a proposal with to five of them that if each would give me $5,000, and I would put in $5,000, we'd have $30,000. I go out and find an apartment complex. They all agreed, and I told my, we'll split the profits 50-50. You get your money back first, and I'll get my money back last. So if I'll take the first loss, so they entrusted me with $5,000 apiece. I bought an apartment complex, 30-unit apartment complex in Northridge, California, which is just, I believe, north of Los Angeles. 6 months later, we sold it for a $100,000 profit. My $5,000 became made a $50,000 profit. Their $25,000 investment, they got $50,000, so they did very well. They got their $25,000 back plus 50,000. So they're very happy, and from there we continue. I continue using them as my investors. As a matter of fact, two are still investing with me, and this is 40. Geez, let's see, this is almost 50 years ago, because when we did that investment in 1973, so it'll be 47 years, and they're still investing with me. And of course, they made millions with that $5,000 investment they started out with, and myself with the formula that I devised years before. I've done very well throughout the years, always putting myself last. So if there's a loss, I take that first loss. But if there's profits, I get to participate very highly. Today, my formula gets me where I can get up to 70% of the profits. So and everybody does very well. There's whenever I put out a memorandum, an offering memorandum, there's times that in 2 hours I'm sold out, and I have to either turn down investors or start cutting down their investments to be able to allow everybody to come in.
Are there other rules like that?
Well, there's a number of things that I do. First of all, uh, I do a lot of due diligence. I look at a lot of properties. I never charge a penny up front. I only get compensated at the end. So the monies that I invest up front, and there's a lot of times that you look at properties, you do your due diligence, you hire attorneys, you make offers, and then decide not to go forward. So those are some dollars that I absorb. And through the years, also, I came to realize that as people are getting older, not everybody wanted to buy green bananas, where you buy a property and it may take years before you realize the profits. So I came up with the idea that we'd have two type of members: financial members and equity members. The financial members get their money back, get their preferential returns first. Then they get their money. but they don't get any equity. But they're up for they're in front of everybody else, just behind the mortgage. Which in most cases, when I buy a property, I go to a bank, guarantee the loan. So my name and net worth is on the line when I do these deals. So the financial members are guaranteed that I'm not going to pay them back within 1 year, and I will pay them back in 5 years, which means that in 5 years, I either have to refinance the property or sell it to pay off the financial members. The equity members come in with 30% of the money. I put up 20%. The financial members would have put up 50%. 50% financial members, 30% equity members, 20% myself. That makes up the 100% required investment. I get 70% of the profits, but my equity members have to get their money back first. In a lot of cases, they also get a preferred return of 0 to 4%, depending on the deal. Then I get a 4% return on my equity. And when we sell the property, refinance the property, the financial members get paid first. By then they would have. We've never missed a preferential payment. They get paid every month. So then they get paid they get their equity back. The equity investors get their equity back and their accrued preferred return, because they don't get a penny until the financial members are completely out. Then I get my accrued return, and then we split the profits 30-70. The way I sell the equity members is that you're putting up 30% of the money and you're getting 30% of the profits. Yes, you could put up 100% of the money and have 100% of the ownership, but you have to do all the work. This way, you put up 30%, you don't have to do anything. I'll do all the work, I'll do all the guarantees, and all you have to do is sit back and wait. And that's a formula that's been very successful for me. And as I said, I got people begging to come in most of the time. And lately, we haven't had very many deals since real estate got pretty hot here in the last few years. We started building in 2009 and been building ever since, high luxury apartments. Back in the 80s, I also built a few thousand apartments. And when the market went, when the law changed and there was a Tax Simplification Act, I think it was 1985, that pretty much pulled the rug underneath real estate investors, which there were a lot of tax shelters back in those days where investors would their investment was a note that they paid so much every year, but the way they would pay it is by the tax savings. So when the Tax Reform Act came about, those benefits got taken away, and a lot of these people that had invested and given a note, that now all of a sudden they could not offset the losses against their ordinary income. A lot of those properties went back to the lenders, and consequently we had a collapse of the market. And fortunately, I survived. As a matter of fact, I've been through 4, and this would be my 5th recession. I've survived every single one of them, and every time I come out better than before. So I've been very fortunate in that respect, in that I've always hoarded cash, because you could have all the equity in the world, but if you don't have the holding power when there are downturns in the economy, that equity evaporates very quickly.
Tell us a little bit about how you think about markets and applying resources at varying stages of the markets.
It's very, very easy. I've learned very early in life that you buy when people are selling and you sell when people are buying. And when people are buying, they're bidding up the prices, and that's the time to sell. There's a lot of buyers out there, very little product, so consequently you become a seller. And then when the markets turn around and everybody wants to sell, prices drop, and that's when I jump in and buy. So it's a very simple formula, at least in real estate, being able to follow what's going on. But we build now. We don't buy because it's cheaper to build than to buy an existing complex. I can build an existing complex. We're building right now. We have at any one point we have 2 or 3 apartment complexes we're building. Right now, the cost of building a new luxury apartment complex cost me about $155,000 per unit. It gets appraised prior to my breaking ground. They're being appraised at $220,000 per unit. So uh, immediately, the minute I finish those complexes, they're worth 220,000. Why would I go out and buy a 220,000 apartment complex when I can build it for $155,000? What we're doing now, though, we're not selling. We're keeping our occupancy a very high interest rate. I mean, rents have gone up tremendously. So we're keeping these properties. And typically, what we do, we'll build, let's say, a $40 million project. And it gets appraised at 55 million. Immediately when we build it, lease it up, we go out and get a loan, and the loan gets us all our money back, 100% of our money back. And sometimes even more than the money we put in, and we still own the complex. So we're keeping those complexes for cash flow. Cash flows are tremendous, and we just keep refinancing. A couple of weeks ago, we had a loan that was on 3 complexes that were all tied in together. We had a loan of $52 million that was coming due. We refinanced it for $94 million, pulled out $42 million in cash, and our mortgage payments came down by $500,000. So I pulled out $42 million tax-free, and I get paid $500,000 for doing that a year. So so we're keeping properties now for cash flow. We have a couple of $1 billion of real estate holdings that we have that we own and manage at this point. The place I'm having problems with, but fortunately we have the staying power, is the hotels. We're the largest owners both in hotels and apartments here in Tucson, and the apartment's probably one of the largest apartment owners in Arizona. The hotels are a problem. However, we're hoarding cash on all these apartment complexes. So when the pandemic struck, and we pretty much, our occupancies came down because we went into a lockdown, we had enough cash reserves that we made an analysis as to how long we could survive before having a problem. And we figured we could survive to the end of the year without having to feed these properties because of cash that we had left on the properties without taking the cash from for the last year or so. And then the stimulus package came about, so we had more staying power. So we're okay with the apartment complexes. We have some shopping centers that I think we're going to do very well because we're repositioning those shopping centers by putting apartments around the shopping centers to create an environment where people can work, play, and live. I think we'll be fine in the apartment complex. Office buildings, I think I only have one office building remaining. I think I might take a hit on that building. I've got some call centers. I think I'm going to have some problem there with the call centers because a lot of these call centers, the people are operating from their homes now, and they're finding out that you don't need dedicated space for call centers. People can work out of their homes. They're happier. They can save a couple of hours if you're living in Phoenix, a couple of hours of commuting time a day. You don't have to get up early in the morning, get ready, get dressed, go to work. You don't have to take that hour of lunch. So consequently, they're very happy staying at work, staying at home, working from home. So call centers, I think there's the need for space is going to decrease tremendously. They'll only need it for training purposes, but I don't see call centers surviving very long.
You think you've always had a rather optimistic and positive mindset?
First of all, my glass has never been half empty, nor will it ever be. I'm very positive. I'm optimistic. So I don't. If you start thinking negative, you're gonna end up with negative results. And that's not to say that I haven't had some bad deals. I've lost millions of dollars in a few deals. But you know what? I moved on. I don't look back. It's one of the things that I live by, and this is another book that I read years ago by Dale Carnegie, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And what I learned from that book is anything I do in life, it doesn't matter what it is. In fact, if I cannot accept the worst that can happen, I won't do it. And that goes with anything in life. So consequently, in my investments, when I make an investment, I'm there's going to be a lot of opportunities for those of us that have been hoarding cash over the last few years.
As you think about your journey over the decades, Bert, I know this might be a little bit difficult to do, but if you could just describe your entrepreneur journey.
And it starts with hard work. And one of the things that I learned in life is you cannot teach hard work. You either have it or you don't have it. You can teach uh, science, you can teach math, you can teach anything else. Hard work, you cannot. I've learned you cannot teach hard work. So to me, it's hard work, integrity, perseverance, determination, hunger, tenacity, good credit. You know, one of the things that I do whenever we employ or even rent an apartment complex, we check the credit because the spread in credit speaks as to who you are. If you have bad credit, you're not going to have a good employee or a good tenant. Passion, respect, mentors that Peter mentioned, friends, good friends. I've always said, you know, choose your friends. There's a saying in Spanish that translates into English: "Tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are." Uh, I mentioned before not being afraid of failure. Goal setting, very important, but set goals that are attainable. Learn how to you start crawling, learn how to walk before you start running. Some people try to start running from the offset, and that's they're set to fail if they set their goals too high at the beginning. Optimism, disciplines, patience, charity, ambition, having a vision, common sense comes into play. I operate with a lot of common sense. Anything that I do, it revolves around common sense. Fortitude, decision making, risk taking, the ability to compartmentalize, uh, and always staying humble. But you know, most important to me is enjoyment. I define success not necessarily in money, but in happiness. If you're a teacher and love your work, enjoy every minute, you have found success. So to me, success is just enjoying every minute of the day, having a passion what you do. Fridays come around and you wonder what happened to the week, and you can't wait for Mondays to come around. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but it's more than 3 or 5 words.
Bert, thank you so much for your perspective around your journey. It is hard to describe an entrepreneurial journey in 5 words, and the way you describe it, it was just fantastic, and it really paints the picture of where you're at, where you've been, and where it is that you're going. One thing I'd love for you to spend a little bit of time on, Bert, now is around all of the philanthropic work that you're doing. I know that you do a significant amount because of the success that you've had, and it's just always been in your heart and in your mind and in your capacity to do. You did that when you were 12 years old with your family and for yourself and for those in your community. You continue to do that today in just an incredible way. And Bert, can you talk about the importance of giving back and the philanthropic work that you're currently engaged in today and why that's so important to you and your family?
Well, you know, I believe I'm a giver. I've always been a giver. I'll help anyone. For years, I've helped. Up to this day, every month, everybody gets checks from me. My family, my immediate family, brothers, sisters, my wife's family, brothers, sisters, and so I'm a giving person. But from a philanthropy standpoint, I am a firm believer that to those that much has been given, we have a duty to give back. And I'm a 100% believer in that. I've been blessed beyond my dreams. I never thought I'd ever get to this point. You know, it's so money doesn't buy you happiness. There's some parts of my life that I wish money could buy for me, but money doesn't buy you everything. So, but nevertheless, it provides a very good life and it solves a lot of problems. But my most recent and proudest activity was buying a large convention hotel with 301 rooms on 8 acres and converting it to a homeless shelter. And over the years, I've given millions and millions of dollars. This shelter right now, I've invested about $10 million into it already. But the idea when I bought this hotel was to let me go back. A few years before I bought this hotel, I had an opportunity to visit a homeless shelter up in Phoenix. I think they changed the name of it, but it was CASS, CASS, Central Arizona Social Services, and I think they changed the name to something else. So anyway, I visited that shelter, and it looked like a homeless shelter from the outside. It was horrible. The whole neighborhood was littered. Businesses had closed. But what I liked about what they were doing there, they were providing a number of services under one campus. The problem was that these people, when they got fed, they'd hung around outside the campus waiting for the next meal, or after they slept, they had to leave and go out, so they'd have to wait again for the shelter to open up and admit them back. So I said, God, I love what they're doing, but if I ever did that, I want to do it with dignity and respect for these people. Treat them no different than I treat you, the President of the United States, or anybody else. I would treat them the same. As a matter of fact, and I'll go back to what we're doing there. I go there right now. I haven't been able to go there for 2 months because of the lockdown. But typically, any given week, I'm there twice a week. I take, if I have luncheon appointments, I take my friends with me to introduce them to the center. And I greet the homeless, get their stories. I like to share their backgrounds, how they ended up where they ended up. And those that end up with addictions, try to get them back on their own feet. So the whole idea here was to not only provide a shelter, feed them, but to get these people to become independent and go out and get a job, rent a place, a house, or whatever it needed to be. So consequently, the whole idea, we called it Center of Opportunity, because it gives these people an opportunity to become independent again. So that was one aspect. The other one, I wanted to create a model for the country. And that as of right now, before the pandemic took place, we had 6 states that had already come in that they heard about the center, that they wanted to see what we're doing out here. And then the last one was to provide all the services under one campus. Right now, we have 35 nonprofits operating in the center. In addition to the 301 rooms and now the public space that the property had, we built 5 more buildings. We're still not completed. We just completed a medical and dental building, a welcome center where these people get processed, a building for Department of Economic Security, where they'll provide all the services that DES provides, so to those that can benefit from it. A training center, where we're going to be able to, and we're just completing the tenant improvements on the training center, and that's to train these people to give them a trade. So when they graduate from the center, they're able to get a job. We help them interview, we help them prepare for the interviews, the resumes, and so forth. Also, what we're doing right now, teaching them financial literacy. Because a lot of these people, they don't have any financial literacy. They go out and get a check. They don't have a bank account. They go to a payday cash-in service, and they're charged. They're earning minimum wage. And they get charged 10 to 20% of the paycheck. They buy a car, they pay high interest rate. They go out and get a title loan. They tell them it's 5% interest rate, but they don't realize the 5% a month is a lot of money. So right now I'm working with a bank to also have a bank at the premises. Most likely to be a credit union, so these people can then open up their checking accounts and be able to cash their checks. Give them interest. Low interest rate loans. So there's quite a bit going on. So I bought the hotel, so I said, gee, now what do I do? So the first thing I did, I interviewed a number of nonprofits because I needed a an anchor tenant to run it for me. I don't know anything about running homeless shelters. All I had was an idea as to what it should we would want to provide in there. So I interviewed 9 different nonprofits. Ended up choosing Gospel Rescue Mission. It's been in existence for about 60 years. And what I liked about them is that they were already providing a number of services in their little facility that they had. Uh, so I ended up with them for 2 reasons. The fact that they were doing a very good job, and I've been one of their supporters for many, many years since I came to Tucson. I've been contributing to them. But what I liked the most of them is that they didn't take any public funding. It's all privately funded donations. Consequently, you don't have the government intervention and tell them how to run it and other reporting requirements to go along with it. So I brought them in. The deal that I made with them, I'll provide you the facilities and charge you $1 a year to operate it for 99 years. However, that $1 a year, it's an option that automatically extends every year in as long as they don't do any for-profit business in there. And then my next goal is going to be to set up an endowment to be able to maintain the premises and to give grants to those nonprofits operating in the center. I'm going to be doing naming opportunities of the different buildings, rooms, hallways, facilities, and so forth. I'll start it with a matching fund of $5 million endowment. I'm working with a friend of mine. I've asked him to match me with $5 million, so we can start out with $10 million. One of my investors, who's elderly, came to me and said, "Bert, I love what you're doing. I'm going to leave my estate to the Center of Opportunity. So don't get surprised when we get a call from my attorney." I met with the attorney. Turns out the estate that she's going to be gifting to the Center of Opportunity is between $25 to $35 million. So my goal is to set up an endowment of about $100 million when it's all done, so that this facility can endure for a lot of years to come and continue to exist and operate in the manner that I envision.
It's a beautiful vision from a beautiful man. Thank you so much, Bert.
Well, I don't want to try and cut any of Bert's grass. He did a phenomenal job, and my heart is just full. I don't think I could have gotten a better individual to represent what I believe and I've lived my life at. That's why it's so critically important that the entrepreneur be allowed to survive. I'm also not a believer in government help. You know, I believe that we have to help ourselves. And Bert is an absolute example. He's a mini government by himself. You know, he's figured out how to make the money, how to look after his people, look after his employees, and then reach out past his own family and look after his community as well. And if each one of us take that lesson that I just said, look after your business, look after your employees, look after your family, and look after your community, this world will be a fabulous place to continue to live in. Thank you, Bert, for being the entrepreneur that you are and the example that you set for all of us. I think I'll just finish off with one thing that Bert didn't say about him that I think he is. He actually did mention the word humble. Bert is very transparent. You know, you get what you get. Like he is what he is, and he doesn't change. Hasn't changed since I first met him at YPO 30 years ago. He hasn't changed, not one little bit. And Bert mentioned common sense was just use your common sense. And unfortunately, I'll close with saying, Bert, it's just not that common. So thank you so much, Bert, for being the first master class teacher. We so appreciate it.